and welcome to another tutorial from Colour with Claire. Today I'm going to be showing you how to do this beautiful unicorn slash mermaid slash neon slash rainbow hair, and we're going to be doing this in two different medias. So we're going to be doing it with pencils and also alcohol markers. You can do it with whatever you want. You can do it with neon paints, you could do it with water-based markers, aqua markers, anything you like, as long as they're bright and vivid and preferably neon colours. So here's the example that I did the other day that I put on my Facebook page, and I had lots of people asking how to do this hair, and this is the one that was done with pencils. So as you can see, the pencils I've used here are the Tombow Erogeton, and they're the ones that I'm going to be using for the tutorial today. And then we have the alcohol marker version, and that was done with the Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers that I'll be using in the second half of the tutorial. So as you can see, quite different finishes to them. This one's a lot lighter, a lot more candy sort of coloured, whereas this one's deeper, but it's also more vibrant. So it really depends on your preference. Now, the book that I'm going to be working out of today is the Hannah Lynn's Mermaid, Fairies and Other Girls of Whimsy. I'm using Hannah Lynn's books because they have some absolutely wonderful examples of girls with very wide strands of hair, and that just makes it a lot easier to show you how to colour hair on tutorials, rather than little small illustrations with, you know, strands of hair that are all over the place. These are better examples. So we'll start off with the Tombow pencil version. Now, as I said, you can use any neon pencils that you like. These are just the ones that I have to hand. Now, the colours that I'm using is Equatorial Orange, Vigorous Green, Firefly Yellow and Plastic Pink. And I'm just going to zoom in so that you can see better what we're doing. So first of all, usually when you're doing your adult colouring books, you try to keep your pencils sort of a medium between sharp and blunt, because too sharp and you get all of those nasty streaks and it's not as easy to blend. But with this tutorial, I'm going to ask you to try and keep your pencils as sharp as possible at all times. And that's because we want the streaks this time. We want it to have a realistic look of strands of hair. Now, don't get me wrong, you can do it in a smooth and seamless blend, like you blend a rainbow. That's totally up to you, but I quite like the look of realistic strands of hair sort of blowing everywhere. So once you've got your pencils nice and sharp, we're going to start off with the darkest colour, and obviously none of these colours are dark, but the darkest one is the Plastic Pink. Now, usually when you're colouring hair, for example, if you're colouring brown hair, you would have a darker brown or a black starting at the crown and around the edges of the face and all the places where it would fall into shadow. And that's basically what we're going to emulate with the darkest of our neons, this pink. So we're going to start from the very top of each strand of hair, and we're going to be using a flicking motion like this. Now, don't worry if your pencil end just breaks a little bit, that's very, very normal. Now, the flicking motion, it can go away from you, it can go towards you, as long as you're not drawing actual lines, because we want to make it look as though it starts quite thickly and quite densely at the top of the stroke, and then thins and tapers out as we flick it away or towards us. So what I'm doing is making sure that the bottoms and the tops of each strand of hair have this darkest colour, and the bottom and the top can be very densely coloured, so it can be completely block coloured like you can see here. But the thing that I want to impress upon you is that you must leave some white space. The white space, oddly enough, is what causes the colours to really pop. So we're definitely going to be leaving some white space here. And I'm just going to do a few of these strands just to show you how it works. So at the top I'm flicking towards myself, and at the bottom I'm flicking away from myself, just to get that tapered flick. Now, if you do find that your pencil is becoming very blunt, because it does happen quite quickly, give it a sharpen. Make sure you do, to keep those lovely strands of hair in view. So So don't worry about the length of the flicks, it's all very, very random. Try not to make them exactly the same length all the way across. Bring it out a little bit here and there, makes it look even more realistic. So then we go in with our next darkest colour, which is going to be this orange. And again, we can take it straight over the pink and just do those beautiful flicks. Really, really easy. You can even sort of do a bit of a rocking backwards and forwards flicking motion if you wanted. Just getting some of that colour in there. Again, with the green, just flick it on. You can put more pink more deeply into the edges if you want to, just to give it that look of going from dark to light and a bit more depth, a bit more dimension. And lastly, with our Firefly yellow, you really can just do this with that, because with it being a very, very light colour, you can't really see it when it gets messy, so that's good. So right about now you should have something that looks a little bit like this. Again, if you're not happy with areas of pink or any of the colours, you can just go back in. You can thin out the strands a little bit, you can add more strands. You can come back in with the colours pretty much as much as you like. And that should be your almost final result. So when you've got something that looks a bit like that, try and get yourself either a white gel pen, a white Posca pen, a paint pen, or even a very fine paintbrush and some acrylic white paint. And at this point you might have noticed that I have not left too much white in there, and that was my golden rule, wasn't it, to leave some white. But that can be remedied. So if you have coloured it too much and you haven't left those highlights and those shine parts, get yourself some white material, whether it's gel pen or paint or whatever you have, and you can add those highlights back in. Also doing this very, very roughly. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, the more sort of randomised and scruffy it is, the more realistic it looks. So I'm just adding bits of white in there, making some areas thicker than others, particularly on the darkest parts, these pink parts, it shows up really, really well. But as you can see, even though close up it looks quite scruffy and it didn't take any sort of skill whatsoever, my tutorials usually don't, it is really quite effective. And as I said, if you've used too much white, you can scrape it off or rub it off if it's still wet. You can go back in with your pencils, and this is the type of thing that you'll be achieving there. So I really hope that you've got something from the pencil tutorial. Now, if you are using markers, we will go on to the next stage and you can follow that as well. So, and I'm just going to flick through and find a nice big bit of wide hair. I think we'll go for this one. Just so that we've got enough room for our marker tips. And I'm using Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. I've got the neon yellow, the neon orange and the neon red, and that's all that they've got in neon colours. But you can obviously use any kind of pens that have got a neon range, and they probably have blues and greens and all sorts. So I'm just working with 3 colours here. Again, our darkest colour is the pink. Now you can use the smaller tip if you are using a double-ended pen to create those streaks. And again, see, I'm flicking towards myself now just to get that very sort of hazy edge to the flick. And I'm starting at the top and I'm also bringing it in from the bottom as well. So we'll do this all over this sort of fringe area. Again, lines don't have to be completely the same length, just pulled a few more up into the white bit there. Again, we don't want to cover all of the white, so we're going to go in next with our neon yellow, do exactly the same thing. This time I'm just sort of doing that motion, just flicking it forwards and backwards. And then finally with the neon orange, this just brings the red out into the white a little bit more, but not as dark. So we're creating the stranded look. Again, you could do this really smoothly and seamlessly so that it goes in from a graduation of colour, but I quite like the streaky hair look. So it's really a lot quicker with markers, as you can see. It generally is a lot brighter because of the ink, but remember it does bleed, so do be careful if you are using alcohol markers. I haven't used very much pressure on this, which is why it hasn't gone through to the other side, but it definitely would if I was using a lot more pressure. So that is how we do it with markers. Again, you can bring in your white gel pen if you haven't left enough white in the streaks, but that is really an optional extra. So I'm just flicking this in here, there and everywhere, no rhyme or reason, and as I say, it just sets off the streaks of the hair and gives it a little bit of a highlight and a shine. So that is how I do hair with alcohol markers and also with pencils. Now I feel that this example that I did here for you today with the pencils, if I can find it again, wasn't really a great example to do with curled hair, but at least it's shown you that it can be done and what it looks like, and not to worry if it's a little bit of a mess. So great technique to do with straighter hair. Still can do it with curly hair, and again with markers, beautiful rich colour, and it's a lot quicker and easier, but it depends what books you're using, it depends what medium you favour. So I really hope that this really simple way of creating beautiful unicorn slash mermaid slash rainbow slash neon hair has been helpful for you and easy to understand, and that you can emulate it in your colouring books. Please do show me if you follow any of my tutorials. I absolutely love to see people's examples. You can find me everywhere. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just search Colour with Claire. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.